Hey, welcome back to the garage here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today we're going to start on a new project for a console piece off of a Mustang. Now we're going to do this in forged carbon from Venom Carbon. Here's what we're starting with. All right, so here's the piece we're going to start with. Now this is just a standard double-din piece you can find. They're aftermarket. It's a plastic, so you have a single-din radio with a pocket down below. Otherwise, you can do one with a equalizer cutout. But this is something I had laying on the ground. Now what you're going to notice is that this has some dimpling or some stipple grain on the front. It does not have anything on the edges. It's got 4 speaker holes and then of course the cutout here. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to go ahead and sand this edge all the way around. We're going to sand the front face, and on the edges here we're also going to add in some hatching with a razor blade. I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the back just to make sure we have good wrap around the edges for a clean fit. Inside the pocket is going to be cleaned. I'm going to go ahead and cover most of this pocket inside with blue painter's tape. That will keep the resin or the epoxy off of the face of the plastic, but it also will put in just a little bit on the edge of the forged carbon fiber, and then the tape is easy to come off at the end. Now with these different screw holes, a couple things I would recommend is go ahead and find one as kind of a pilot hole that will fit, and then one that will re-drill this, because as you cover this over with carbon fiber, whether it's it's either fabric or with the forged, you'll want to open these back up. So you can open it from the back with a normal drill bit, and then you can open up the full face with that. Now the material we're going to be using is the chopped carbon fiber from Venom Carbon. This is going to be awesome stuff. You can go ahead and get a little bit of this, and a little bit of this is going to go a long way to cover up this part. So again, let's go ahead and get sanding. We'll get it cleaned, get it taped, and ready to go. All right, so here's what we're going to look at for the console. You can see that it's now sanded. It's kind of a dull finish all the way around, and you can definitely see that I've hatched it with just a simple razor blade. Pattern doesn't matter, just get some hatching in there and it'll work. Now, I can also see that I've got blue painter's tape. Now that just gives me a little bit of a lip for the carbon to stick to all the way around, and then it'll be fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and cover this bottom edge down in there with tape also, and then we're going to go ahead and start mixing up resin to get it with some resin on the surfaces I need, and then we're going to let it sit for just a little bit to let it start to tack up. Okay, so here's a look at the pieces cleaned with the epoxy resin and hardener mix on them. Now I'm doing multiple pieces in here, so that's why you see the console piece, and you also see the dash around. So the next thing I need to do is I need to set up my vacuum sealer, because I'm going to try doing this in a vacuum sealing to make sure it sticks down. I'm going to go ahead and get that set up. I already have the bags pulled and everything together. So these are just your vacuum bags here, and I'll go ahead and get those situated. I'm going to go ahead and get the carbon starting to stick down on each part, put it in the bag, vacuum seal it, and then we'll go ahead and let them sit for a good day or two. Okay, there you have your console piece, all vacuum sealed. You can see that it's pulled around the edges nicely. So any kind of extra carbon that was kind of sticking out is now pulled down to that edge. So this should stick it. We're going to leave it like this for a couple days, and then we're going to go ahead and cut it open, and then we should be able to start laying resin on the top. All right, so it looks like we had a few days for this sat now, so we should be in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and cut this open. You can see it's clearly still vacuum sealed, still nice and tight. So I'm just going to use some scissors to go ahead and cut this open. I'll let air back in. Now I'm hoping that this will just pop loose from there. Let's take a peek here. Oh yeah, nice. Coming loose, not taking the carbon with it, so the carbon's definitely stuck to the plastic. Ooh, nice. All right, so there's going to be our kind of our product here. One thing you can see is that resin had a little bit of a, on this bag, there's a, I don't know if you want to call it a stimple or whatever, kind of a texture on the back. So there it is, that's that piece. Now from here, I think what I'm going to do is just leave these little pieces on the edge, and I'm just going to go ahead and start sealing this in resin on the top. You can feel there's definitely a rough texture here. I'll probably go ahead and sand, maybe just sand some of this, or see if I can cut a couple of these pieces off. And then we're going to go ahead and start laying resin on. Simple as that. 2 parts resin, 1 part hardener, and then it's going to sit for days because my shop is cold. And then we'll come back in a few days and see how we go. All right, so here's just going to be a quick peek at the first layer of top resin. Again, I just laid it on. Now my shop is about 45 degrees, so this, I would expect if it was warmer, it would be drippy, but this is actually kind of, it's like, kind of like a gel, a hard gel to go because it's so cold. It actually goes on very nicely, and we're going to leave it at that. Okay, here's a good look at the radio surround. Now you can see that this is the second layer of resin going on top. So you can start to see that it's still forged. You can start to see the reflection or the flex of the carbon in there, but it's starting to build up layers. So now we're going to let this sit for probably, oh gosh, it's probably only 50 degrees in my shop. So we're going to let this sit for days until I come back, and then we'll add in more layers, and we'll try to get rid of some of this extra on the edges. And then we're going to start getting in the final pieces before we get the last sanding done, some clear coat, and then we'll finish it up. All right, so we're starting to get towards the end of the radio bezel. One thing I noticed on the last one is that I started getting problems because of the cold. Now, one of the things you notice here is you can see in the surface I've got these little pinholes, and that's mostly because the temperature has been extremely cold. So overnight we've had down to -8 so far, and that really makes my shop cold because I haven't had a heater running. So I've got a heater on now to try and heat up the shop so I can do this last round of resin. I'm going to go ahead and scuff this up. You can see I've already cut it, kind of done some sanding already, and I'm going to go ahead and do one more round of resin, and then I'll go ahead and final sand this and get everything done. That should, with the heat in here, allow it to fill in these pinholes, and then we'll see what the finished result looks like. All right, so here's going to be our finished product, looking at the radio bezel. Now, after I did the last piece, I just sanded everything up through and opened up the holes for the screws. Now, I've just displayed some screws there. These are off of something else, but they would be the appropriate size if you're going to put this in. And then I had an old Kenwood stereo just to kind of simulate how the radio would look. So if I could just kind of show you the finished product here. This is all sanded with 2 coats of clear on it. Not bad. You know, a couple mistakes here and there, but I feel like it'd be good if I still had a 87 and 93 Mustang. I would rock it just for the fact that I could. So that's going to be the finish on the radio bezel. Now I need to go ahead and finish the other parts, and then we'll move on to something else.